President warns against plunging the country into ethno-religious crisis.
Our duty to ensure that people do not lose faith in the system. It's when people lose faith in the system that you have all the insurgencies, all the problems, and the various things that tend to happen around us.
Senate leadership refutes allegation of corruption.
We want to state clearly that the 4 presiding officers of the National Assembly do not collect any money for rent, furniture, and renovation from the FCDA or any federal government agency for that matter.
Troops of Operation Lafia Dole arrest many suspected Boko Haram members and record more than 30 deaths.
And today on Good Morning Nigeria, we focus on life expectancy in Nigeria, plus implications of President Donald Trump's executive orders.
All right, today on Good Morning Nigeria, we're talking longevity, long life, or better still, life expectancy. Now, let me ask this question. How long would you want to live on Earth? I'm sure a lot of people would want to live as long as possible, Kingsley.
Absolutely.
Well, for many others, it's not the numbers. Numbers don't, of course, matter. What counts is the quality of life you live. But have you also wondered why some people live longer than others?
Well, Clive, epidemiologists, that's those who evaluate health outcomes, have given various reasons, and that's based on the diverse studies that have been done. But the important thing to note here is that life expectancy varies from country to country. But the prompt for our conversation this morning is the report by the WHO, that's the World Health Organization, which puts life expectancy in Nigeria at 55 for women and 54 for men.
Well, Kingsley, that's even among developing countries, putting Nigeria in the 177th position, that's in the global index of life expectancy ratio. That's just above 8 other countries of the world. And it throws up very many questions. For instance, why is Nigeria's life expectancy low compared to other African countries? Say, those, for instance, that have been devastated by war and other diseases. Somalia, for instance, which has 60. So what should be done to tackle the situation? And precisely, Kingsley, what are some of those predisposing factors, to low life expectancy or otherwise?
That's correct. That's a bit of a pertinent questions to ask. But of course, I think it's important to also underscore the fact that the 50s figure that we are seeing now are a climb up from what used to be very dismal figures. At some point in the 90s, I think we're hovering around the 40s. Probably women then 52 and then men 48, 49. But
the startling discovery I made yesterday is that even the US, the life expectancy ratio is even declining despite all the technologies and innovations that have come through, especially in the field of medicine.
Well, that's true. There's no question about that, but we also have figures from Japan, which are quite salutary figures also from the Scandinavian countries, as well as from other advanced countries like Australia and Canada. We show them usually in the 70s range for life expectancy. But there are a number of factors that go in the computation of life expectancy in a country. And as you indicated, sometimes, what matters, not sometimes indeed, what matters the most is the quality of life that you are able to live in a particular environment.
All right, quality, numbers. Well, some people will look at Kingsley and say, look, I want to live as long as possible. But of course,
I'm not an old man yet.
No. You're talking about quality,
yeah, that's right.
And that's debatable. Many people will say, look, I don't want quality, I want numbers. But these are some of the questions we'll be, of course, seeking answers to, and that's the thrust of our program for today, Friday. It's Good Morning Nigeria if you're watching, and I am Claire Adilabu Abdul Razak. Once again, thank you for joining us.
And I'm Kingsley Osadolai, join my colleague, and also welcome you to this edition of the program, reaching you as always live on the network service of the Nigerian television Authority. Now, also up for discussion in the course of the program today, the executive orders issued by President Donald Trump, who was sworn in on the 20th of last month. Now, what are the implications of some of these executive orders on the global order?
All right. Very interesting topic, you would say. Now, we also hope to take on our complementary segments, newspaper review, that's a must, business, sports, foreign, and we'll hopefully round off the program today with arts and entertainment. But right now, let's join Joseph Johnson, who is our guide, of course, in the newsroom. Joseph, for you, does number count or is it quality of life?
For me, Claire, I want both. But of course, I would love to live long as God willeth. All right, good morning. Thanks for joining us on the news desk at this hour. Acting President Yemi Osinbajo has reiterated the need for all Nigerians to guard against plunging the country into ethno-religious crisis, stressing that security and a buoyant economy remain key in the Buhari administration agenda. The acting president, in a lecture titled Economic Dimension of National Security at the National Defense College, explained that the weak criminal justice system is creating a loophole that makes it possible to evade consequences of wrongdoings and therefore needs to be reworked.
The country has lost 60% of its foreign earnings, with the daily loss of 1 million barrels of oil. 40% of gas for power is also lost, resulting in low power generation. The negative impact.
The current leadership of the National Assembly has refuted allegation of receiving 630 million naira for renting and renovating official residences, as insinuated by a civil society organization. Senator Dino Malaye noted that the Assembly's presiding officers cannot be part of such illegality.
That the 4 presiding officers of the National Assembly do not collect any money for rent, furniture, and renovation from the FCDA or any federal government agency for that matter.
Now, it has been observed that the value of confiscated crude oil and illegally refined diesel in Nigeria in 2016 amounts to more than 420 billion naira. This revelation was made by the Chief of Naval Staff, Rear Admiral Ibokete Ibas, before the House of Representatives Committee on Navy while defending the 2017 budget of the service.
The major focus of the 2017 budget is mainly on the ongoing fleet renewal, infrastructure and capacity upgrade, amongst others. Efforts to improve the welfare of personnel will also be sustained.
To security matters now, in continuation of operations to clear remnants of Boko Haram terrorists, troops of Operation Lafia Dole have intensified mop-up and ambush operations, where many were arrested and over 30 deaths recorded during various encounters. Theatre Commander Operation Lafia Dole, Major General Loki Rabo, stated this while briefing the media.
Of inquiry established that the airstrike was.
If the National Health Act of 2014 is fully implemented, medical tourism would be a thing of the past, as these will ensure universal health coverage. President, National Association of Resident Doctors of Nigeria, Dr. Onyebueze John, said this while interacting with the management of the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA, with a recommendation for objective reportage of health sector issues.
To escalate into strike, into a total and indefinite strike. And that is why we are doing everything possible, everything humanly possible, to ensure that we explore all avenues of advocacy.
If a woman dies because she does not want to see a male doctor, there's a problem. If the distance between when she's in labor and the hospital is very far, then it's easy for her to bleed to death. So these are important areas that you must look at while you are doing your advocacy, and put it on the table as part of the work that you do.
And now we apologize for not being able to bring you some of the soundbite, but that's it on the news desk at this hour. Claire and Kingsley return shortly after the break.
If you hear a bomb explosion or gunshots of an active shooter, That might be a terror attack. At such times, always remember 3 action words. Run, hide, report. Don't try to run towards the terror scene to save the situation, because there might be a second bomb blast or another attack. Run far away and take cover. Make sure you are safe first. Yes, it is in our nature to sympathize over the hurt, but remember, only trained personnel can help in such situations. When in a secured environment, promptly call relevant authorities and help will come. For anonymous reporting, call 09630-3250-5 or 0813-2222-106. If you see something, say something. Nigeria unite against terrorism. This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
The federal government's social investment program has begun. The poorest and most vulnerable in the land get 5,000 naira monthly, and phase 1 has started in 9 states of the federation. 200,000 unemployed graduates have been engaged in the N-Power Volunteer Corps, designed to engage 500,000 people. 5.5 million children will be fed regularly in the homegrown school feeding program, which kicked off in 3 states last year, with 9 more to be added this year. And under the Government Enterprise and Empowerment Program, GEEP, thousands of cooperatives, market women, farmers and enterprising youth have been receiving between 10,000 and 100,000 naira soft loans since November 2016. The Social Investment Program has begun. It can only get better. We promise change. Change is here.
So what's up, sweetheart? You really look like you're up to something.
I have a secret.
Okay.
I'll be going to Europe next week.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Like you have your visa, your passport, your plane ticket?
No, not that way. Some men are helping us. We pay them, they take us through the desert, and then we cross the sea into Europe.
The desert, the sea. Isn't that the route where many have died?
Yes, it is indeed a very dangerous journey. In 2016 alone, 4,900 people died while crossing the Mediterranean Sea to enter Europe. Many were Nigerians. For the very few who survived the journey, they are forced into prostitution or other crimes just to survive. Eventually, they will be arrested and deported to Nigeria. Don't be a victim. Don't go this way.
This is a public service announcement brought to you by NTA.
All right, thank you for joining us. If you're tuned in, this is NTA and you're right on time for business. Now, development promotion experts insist purposeful government policy is key to reversing massive fall in investment figures, and that's as released by the National Bureau of Statistics. We now join Amina Nujim for details of these and more.
Recent reports from the National Bureau of Statistics, NBS, indicate the total value of capital imported into Nigeria in the 4th quarter of 2016 is estimated to be $1.5 billion. This decline is no different from the outlook of revenue in the course of the year and growth as well. A development promotion expert, Ogbonna Okuku, says the massive fall in investment was expected considering the current economic variables in Nigeria and the fall in the value of the naira.
If an investor is looking at putting money into an economy, and then when you're about to repatriate the same funds, it loses value. So the appetite for investment in that particular economy becomes, a no-go area for any investor. So portfolio investors are like sharpshooters. They do their analysis, go in and get out.
On the best option to reverse the negative trend, Ogbonna says government must re-strategize and realign its economic policies.
Less dependent on those things that would make you, less dependent on foreign currencies. So we need to have a quick fix on on our refineries. We need to have, because we depend a whole lot, we expend a whole lot of foreign currency trying to import petroleum product that we consume here in the country. We just need to begin to, support the made in Nigerian goods as being, canvassed by the government. And then again, most importantly, we need to begin to have a raw material base that is realistic.
Global foreign direct investment (FDI) flows fell by 13% in 2016, reaching an estimated $1.52 trillion as global economic growth remained weak and world trade volumes posted anemic gains. A release by UNTAD shows that FDI flows to developed economies dipped by 9% to an estimated $872 billion, fell by 29% in Europe to an estimated $385 billion, with numbers of countries experiencing strong volatility in their inflows. Total transactions at the nation's birth increased by 48.91%, from 64.39 billion naira recorded in November 2016 to 95.88 billion naira in December 2016. Also, total transactions from January to December 2016 decreased significantly to 39.58%, from 1,905.63 billion naira recorded within the same period in 2015 to 1,151.38 billion naira at the end of 2016. Total foreign transactions decreased by 49.51%, 1.025 trillion naira recorded at the end of 2015 to 517.55 billion naira at the end of 2016. Domestic transactions also decreased by 28.02%, from 880.56 billion naira to 633.82 within the same period. Foreign transactions have consistently outperformed domestic transactions since 2011. However, domestic transactions slightly outperformed foreign transactions in 2016, accounting for 55% of the total transactions in 2016. Next is a graphic summary of closing figures from the NSA. And that is business news. I am Amina Nujain.
All right, thank you very much, Amina Nujain, for the business package on Good Morning Nigeria. Next for us is a look at the headlines in some of today's newspapers.
All right, time, of course, to bring in our newspaper reviewer, Bayo Toebe, who's already seated. Bayo, good to see you once again.
All right, Bayo, pleasure to have you as well. Let's take a look now at the front page of Vanguard newspaper, which is the first that we're taking a look at. Now, above the nameplate, you have 661 rifles. That's the kicker. Customs invites Maersk line and APM terminals. 611 rifles, Customs invites Maersk line and APM terminals. And then you have a story there about a Nollywood filmmaker who is in the police net for some alleged scam. Now, this story, of course, says with a double-decker headline, will stop two-faced DBR's planned protest. That's according to the police. And three riders of that headline says you have no right to stop the protest. That's attributed to Fayose. Fayose is the governor of Ekiti State. Now, ex-Niger Delta militants back protest and will call their bluff, says Ebon Olu Adeboruwa, who is a lawyer. Now, just below that, of course, you have a photograph there on the front page indicating some suspects, who were picked up sometime recently. Claire.
All right, let's also quickly take a look at the front page of this day newspaper. Indeed, very prominent story that is trending on all the papers is that, of course, the appointment of the substantive CJN, and that's the lead story on the front page of this day newspaper. And it reads, of course, in a short while, you'll get to see that, talking about Onohe appealing to Nigerians not to pressure Buhari over appointment of CJN. Onohe appeals to Nigerians not to pressure Buhari over appointment of CJN. That's the caption of this day. Comes with riders there. Acting CJN distances itself from those given ultimatums. And Colonel Dangua asks NJC not to submit any other nominee to president. That's a lead story on the front page. Of course, just above the masthead, a little above the masthead, we would also have a story there. But of course, the one you're seeing right now, Jonathan, comfort resolutions can end Southern Kaduna and other ethno-religious crises. 17 suspects involved in Kafanchan killings, of course, arrested. That's also trending on the front page. PDP, APC reject police ban on Two-Faces anti-government protests. You can find the details of that story on page 12. And of course, if you go up above the nameplate, if we can see that, there's a trending story just above the nameplate. I think that's the much we can take from this day.
All right, Baya?
Yes. Let's start with the story on the Kaduna and crisis and religious crisis. Former President Goodluck Ebele Jonathan says if Nigeria fails to tackle religious violence and extremism, the menace will destroy the country. He was speaking at a presentation at the House of Representatives in the United States on Africa. He said failure to apprehend culprits and in previous religious killings had emboldened those who engage in such acts. He says if a nation like Nigeria does not kill religious persecution and extremism, then that menace will kill the nation. He says security agencies had a history of failing to apprehend the culprits. Those have been more than, there have been more than 10 incidences of religious crisis in Kaduna State since 1992. Only once were culprits, 14 of them sentenced to death for that. President Goodluck Ebele Jonathan, former President Goodluck Ebele Jonathan, also said that supports sort of recommendations of 2014 National Conference, in which there was proposal for Equity Commission to be created, will be the positive solution to end this religious crisis. Also on Niger Delta, he said agitation has predated Nigeria's independence far before 1914. And he says military crackdown will not end agitation. The solution, he says, allow every citizen to exploit their natural resources as they deem fit. All they are required is to pay adequate taxes to the federal government. He stressed that this is the position of the 2014 National Conference. The National Conference, you will recall, took place in 2014, and the recommendations were quite substantial. Many of them were executive prerogatives that could have been directed. Others require constitutional amendment, but up till the time he left office, unfortunately, nothing was done about it. He was speaking on challenges facing Nigerian Christians and the quest for peace. Talking about suspects, 17 suspects have been paraded by the police. The first PRO, Jimo Mashud, says that 29 were arrested. Firearms were also recovered from them. Those arrested, according to some newspapers, comprise some Fulani and natives of southern Kaduna. They are to be charged for inciting public disturbances, disturbance of public peace, causing mischief by fire, corporal homicide, and other crises. And talking about the story that is dominating most of the headline, Acting Chief Justice of Nigeria, Walter Onoge, has advised all and sundry to allow President Muhammadu Buhari a free hand to do his job. He dissociated his office and himself with the ultimatum being bandied around to the president, and he said he thanks Nigerians, but such ultimatum is not going to is going too far. Rather, it is a disrespect to the office of the president. He says that he thanks Nigerians and noting that the time for him to act as CJN has not expired. In the same vein, former governor, military governor of Kaduna State, Colonel retired Abubakar Dangiwa Umar, has urged the Senate not to confirm or any other nominee other than Justice Onoge. He said in the statement, the failure of the presidency to forward the name to the Senate is giving guesses, a problem of guesses and speculations. One of the speculations, he says, is that led to insinuations of a ploy to deny Southerners. He said the NJC must not forward another name and insist on Justice Onoge.
All right, Bayo, thank you very much. Let's now go over to New Telegraph, just below the nameplate. That's where we start the headlines. New Telegraph, below the nameplate, says Budget Defense, SGF shuns Senate. Details of that story can be found on page 3. And the story Bayo just talked about a moment ago, and which Claire also read from the other papers, we have it here as well. Onoge, that's the kicker. Don't threaten Buhari over my appointment. And Wike directs banks to close dormant accounts. Wike is governor of Rivers. This story in detail on page 29. And kerosene explosion kills pregnant woman and son. That story is on page 9. Now, lead story for the New Telegraph says fuel scarcity. With enough PMS and aviation fuel, that's according to NNPC. PMS stands for Premium Motor Spirit, which is also petrol. Now, 128 firms bid for NNPC's DSDP crude import program, and Navy seizes crude oil and diesel worth 420 billion naira. That's according to the Chief of Naval Staff. Details of the story can be found on pages 2 and 3 inside New Telegraph. Now, below the photograph on the front page there, we have Kaduna killings. Police arrest 17, recover assorted arms with 2 riders. I sold guns for 40,000 naira each. That's according to a suspect. And Khan and JNI don't spell culprits. That's on page 6. And Better Sleep has a connection with libido according to the headline there on page 7.
And all right, let's quickly take a look at the Daily Trust, and it also leads with a story on the CJN, and we've said this before. It's a story that's trending on all the papers. Looking at other stories now, just a little below the nameplate there. Senate to block outsiders from hearing customs, page 3. Police parade 17 suspects over Southern Kaduna crisis, page 3 as well. And if you take a look at the picture story trending on the front page, that's the theater commander, Operation Lafia Dole, Major General Leo Irabo, pointing to a former Boko Haram fighter who was amputated by the insurgents for backing out of the group's activities. And that was during a press conference in Maiduguri yesterday. Federal government begins certification of Lagos, Abuja airports, page 6, and trending stories at the bottom. NNPC saves $500 million with new oil swap deal, GMD, page 13. Lawyers' bags stolen in court during Justice Ademola's trial, page 7. And Kanu mass wedding, Ganduje to marry off 1,520 women. But just inside the page, Kingsley and Bayo, we did, of course, discuss the issue of NHIS, and that was Monday.
That was correct.
That was Monday. Yes, and the story here says NHIS asks ICPC to probe HMOs. All right, Bayo.
Good. Let's talk about the mass wedding in Kano. 1,520 women are ready for the next mass wedding. So far, over 4,000 prospective couples have actually registered. In fact, there have been indications that surrounding states from Kano, you have some prospective couples migrating to Kano to get themselves registered for this mass wedding. The Commissioner for Local Government, Alhaji Murtada Sulegado, says that the funds for the wedding has been released and it is going to take place very, very soon. The Senate Committee on the Custom and Excise says that it will amend the law to ensure that Customs Service is the Controller General of the Custom is no longer appointed from outside. The Chairman, Senate Committee for Custom and Excise and Tariff, Senator Hope Uzodema, says that the tendency to appoint from outside is undermining the revenue generation challenge of the customs. He was meeting with 5 previous controller generals of customs, and they also asserted that the idea of bringing people from outside was undermining the service. The former CG said that, in fact, the current Controller General of Custom ought to be designated as sole administrator and not a Controller General. That's all that I have.
Okay, yeah, very quickly, let's take some headlines from the bottom half of Blueprint newspaper, because the lead story and then the other below the nameplate are stories that headlines we read from other papers as well. Just said, Senate falls 250 million naira gatehouse for VP. That's on page 5. And wrongful termination, banker turned journalist floors Zenith Bank. That's on page 13. And dismissed Lieutenant Colonel dies awaiting justice. Details of the story can be found inside. And then Ekiti court remands headsman for grazing on farmland. Details of that story can be found on page 13. Of course, there also former president talking about resolution of the implementation of the 2014 Confab report. So,
yeah, talking about the gatehouse, in fact, it was a finding of the Senate committee when they visited. They even visited the bungalow that is being constructed for the vice president. The specification was that it is a concrete wall, and one of the senators said, I went with a hammer, hit the wall, and I saw block. Therefore, they are going to call the organization that built the to question about the variation in the specification.
And just before we round off our bio, of course, sports yesterday, that's the ongoing AFCON competition. Ghana bout to Cameroon, 2-0.
2-0, yes.
2-0. And we just heard that ex-Chelsea midfielder Frank Lampard has also retired after a 21-year professional career. Kinsley, I beat you to sports.
Is it Chelsea legend?
Well, it's, it was in Chelsea. Lampard was, a great midfielder for Chelsea and England, and he's had a distinguished career. And of course, Ghana suffered yesterday 2 second-half goals, and they faced Egypt in the final. So I'm sure it will be.
Cameroon, Egypt for the final.
Yes. Ghana suffered a loss, and then Cameroon goes
very painful loss.
So, well,
all right.
Stuff happens. That's what it is in sport. Baya Toyebi, thank you for being with us today, and indeed all through the week. We hope you have a restful weekend.
Yes,
and we'll look forward to seeing you on Monday. Okay, this is Good Morning Nigeria. We're taking a short break. Remember, we have 2 items to discuss. Life expectancy in Nigeria. What are the issues? And then Donald Trump and his rush of executive orders.
Change is here and it's going to stay. Change begins with you. Oh yeah, make we go. So let the change begin from within. Look at you, oh Gerula. Change begins with you and me. Change begins with me. Change begins with me. Change begins with me.
Hey, come on.
Ah, mon chéri.
Kilo dey by go.
Make the whole Africa begin to the talk. You know go fit get this one though. Make you still dey look for another. Talkstuff.com na app wey be say e don arrange everything wey concern social media for you for inside one app. Check am now. Make you kaka go sign up sharparly on top talkstuff.com. Talk dey cheap. Make your own be good.
NTA Properties Investment Company Limited, a subsidiary of the Nigerian Television Authority, specializes in creating comfort in all areas of life, such as real estate investments, that is, land, houses, and office spaces, mass leasing, savings and loan scheme, household items and car loans, and so much more. Other information and entertainment services include Property in Style, a TV program that airs on the network service of the NTA, and also Property Connect, a nationwide magazine. Our priority is to bridge poverty gaps and sustain quality welfare of our clients. Partner with us and watch us help you grow. Pay us a visit today at the NTA headquarters permanent site, Area 11 Garki, Abuja, or our Lagos office at number 15 Awolowo Road, Ikoyi, Lagos. For more information, visit our website on www.ntaproperties.com.ng, or you can email us on ntapic2000@yahoo.com. Call us on 080-2316-3474 or 080-6939-5185 or 070-3189-0555. NTA Properties Investment Company Limited, the much needed help at your doorstep.
All right, you're welcome back, and it's still Good Morning Nigeria. Now, we indicated earlier that we're having two items for discussion. The first of which is on life expectancy in Nigeria. Now, let's join our correspondent, Ngozi Chude, who has his background report.
The World Health Organization, in its 2016 life expectancy data, revealed that Nigeria has one of the lowest life expectancy ratios in Africa and in the world. Standing at 177th position, Nigeria records 55 years for females and 54 years for males in its life expectancy ratio. Surprisingly, disaster and war-torn countries like South Sudan, Rwanda, Haiti, Yemen, Afghanistan, and poorer nations like Mozambique and Democratic Republic of Congo all have a higher life expectancy rate than Nigeria. For instance, in the Democratic Republic of Congo, citizens on the average live up to 59 years, while Algeria's rate is put at 75 years. Experts attribute the high number of deaths in Nigeria to causes which range from health-related to natural disasters and violence. They add that the reason is hugely hinged on the low standard of living in the country, especially with the current economic realities. With the struggle to survive, many invariably are exposed to undue stress, which leads to unwanted health issues. Another salient point they raised is the lack of required infrastructure and poor health services in most hospitals in the country, which contributes largely to high mortality rates. However, beyond this worrisome development, experts advise that citizens must live within a stipulated and acceptable lifestyle. Such, they believe, should be eating the right food in the right quality and quantity while cultivating the regular medical checkups, which most Nigerians shy away from. Most importantly, however, the call for pragmatic and proactive steps by the government is one vital ingredient which guests on Good Morning Nigeria will focus on today, including what form of enlightenment should be appropriate to address and tackle the issue of low life expectancy in Nigeria.
All right. Thank you very much, Ngozi Chude, for that background report. Now we have two guests with us in the studios here to discuss the issue in greater detail. First, we'd like to welcome Professor Abdulsalami Nasidi. Professor Nasidi, of course, is the former CEO of the Nigeria Center for Disease Control. Of course, we remember him. He was a regular guest a little over 2.5 years ago when we had Ebola in Lagos. Professor Nasidi, a pleasure to have you join us on the program this morning.
Thank you very much. Good morning, fellow Nigerians.
All right, Kingsley, we also expect the Statistician General, hopefully, that's Dr. Yemi Kale. When he joins us, we will be introducing him to you. But in the meanwhile, we have here with us a public health expert and former staff of World Health Organization. That's Dr. Isaac Abuja. Dr. Abuja, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Okay, yeah, let's begin the conversation actually with Dr. Abuja. I mean, part of the prompt for taking on this topic today has to do with one of the reports by the WHO indicating the life expectancy in the country. First, can we have an understanding of how the figures are computed? How is it arrived at to say, look, at some point now, this is life expectancy 55 for women, 54 for men in Nigeria?
Yes, the figures are computed by a demographic exercise, sometimes by interviews, sometimes by observations, and health indices submitted at hospitals, health centers, and so on, and population figures. The figures don't come from one source, but different sources, and they are usually an aggregation of all the sources of data. The figure submitted by WHO about Nigeria is true. At the moment, the life expectancy is about 54.5%. And of these, women have higher life expectancy than men. And globally, that is also the trend.
So what are the variables that are used in computing these figures?
Okay, the variables that are used are the death rate, birth rate,
And when you look at those things that contribute to this, things like the health status, maternal mortality rate, child mortality rate, infant mortality rate, fertility rate also for women, and so on. All these figures are added together, are used together to do the computation.
All right, Professor Nasidi, well, let's get your own views on this. I mean, the figures that have come out now, are these figures that, you know, will say, look, they're acceptable, or they could be challenged?
These figures can be challenged because they're actually conducted on a very sound scientific protocols on how to, you know, assess how long is any individual expected at birth, you know, to live in a particular country, in a particular condition, and in a particular time space. So if you take, for instance, four of us here now, if I am born the same year with you, I might stand the chance of living 5 years, you 20 years, she 40 years, he 60 years. So they do the average. And, you know, it's usually extensive randomized sampling, and we have what we call health and demographic National Health and Demographic Service. So WHO have well-defined, scientifically defined protocols they use, and so you can't dispute these figures.
All right, now, the specific aspects, when we begin to break it down, why is it that we have this figure for Nigeria? You talked about birth rate, death rate, and so on. How is it that we have this, especially also as we have challenges, you know, with data?
Yeah, first and foremost is Nigeria is densely populated, the most densely populated nation in the continent. You can see our territory is not the largest, but we have the largest population, and so then secondly, you know, you also know that we have more health facilities, even though we could say they are not decent, but we have more our health workforce is, you know, really large, and so on and so forth. So, but the key is the fact that you know, why is it that despite the fact that we have so many, we are endowed with so many resources, we are yet having such low, you know, life expectancy as compared to, as has been shown in the earlier program, to even countries at war. So, you know, is it real, is it not real, and why are the experts coming out with this figure? In the earlier days, in the 80s, in fact, at independence, our life expectancy was higher than what it is now. You know, so initially, you know, by like mid-90s, late 90s, Nigeria life expectancy was above 60, you know, and we should ask why. And then this kept declining and declining until one time it was 47.4 averagely, which is so low and shameful. Then now, in the last maybe 10 years, it rose a little bit, but still, we're among the last 15 in the world. And I don't think this is acceptable. So we should start asking questions, why are we having this type of situation in the country? And in fact, this is a very major indices of really, you know, that shows whether we are really, you know, developing or not. You know, Human Development Index, to say, okay, so many rich people, so many natural resources, so many things, you know, God has given us, but yet, averagely, the sharing formula is so poor. I'll give you an example. You know, if you take the Nigerian population figures, you know, it's like a pyramid. So people aged under 15, you know, constitute almost 44% of the Nigerian population. But if you take Nigerian budget and how resources are allocated and all this thing, you will see that, you know, this is the segment of the population that is not fairly, you know, taken care of. For instance, you know, this life expectancy, it starts from that below 5. If a country gets it right, good immunization program, good childhood, good education, you know, their life expectancy is higher. So if a child is fully immunized, a child, you know, is well brought up, well fed, and is going to good school, you know, below the age of 5, 10, 15, the chances that he will survive, you know, above 60, 70 is very high.
All right, Prof, let me just clear this puzzle, you know, because I know we're all science, you know, minded here. but let me just clear this puzzle so that we can deal with the science-based issues. What is the relevance of these variables used in computing, the life expectancy ratio for countries, especially when you consider the cultural and religious beliefs of certain people in the will of God, being the cause of one's death. And again, if you look at between income, parities, you discover that the rich and the poor also die at, so.
Yeah. We're actually, I have to remind you, we're talking of average. The average nationwide, cultural or religious. Take for instance religious. All religions say, okay, you are born and the time that you will go is determined. So if the time you will go is determined, and the condition you are living is improving, so that means God has actually planned it that you will live longer. If you take the Muslim countries, I'm a Muslim, and I believe that my time will go, I will come. But I also believe that I want to go in a very good condition, in a better situation, and so on and so forth. So those who say, oh, I won't do anything, I'm waiting for my time to come to go. No, if you take Muslim countries, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, who are very Islamic and so on and so forth, and you take their statistics, their life expectancy is increasing. It's improving because they are doing the right thing. They invest in their children, they invest in the education of their children, they invest in their population, and the sharing formula is excellent. Even though they have very rich people, and they don't allow to have too many poor people. So then secondly, they believe in birth control, but they don't believe, they say, oh, God will give you so many children, so you don't need to do birth control. You don't need. If birth control system comes, that means God is providing you with a tool to actually start looking
Professor
into that
Masidi,
way.
does Nigeria have a problem with overpopulation?
That's true. We have a problem with overpopulation. Our population is increasing in geometric proportion, and the economy is increasing in arithmetic proportion. So it's a big problem. So you can see why some of this is happening. But that's not the reason why we're having low life expectancy. 3 major reasons: corruption, poverty, and pollution. I can emphasize on this later.
Yeah, well, we'll give you the opportunity to emphasize, but if you're talking about poverty and then you're also talking about income distribution, which is looking at the disparity between the very rich few and the so many who are poor, if the population of the poor, was quite smaller, then of course the income distribution, provided the mechanism is also fair, would be something that would redound on them much better. But let's get the views again also of Dr. Isaac Abuja. Dr. Abuja, how does it work out that, in war-ravaged countries or in countries that have fairly unsettled political systems, I mean, at some point Somalia was, described as having vanished from the map. Literally, if you came from Somalia, you were deemed to be stateless. In other words, I mean, somebody could be plucked down at any point in time, and yet the stats from such countries indicate that they have higher life expectancy. How do you explain this?
Well, before I answer this question, let me also add a point to Dr. Nasidi's response, which was excellent. For the people who read the Bible and who believe, who are Christians, God said that it is appointed for a man to live for 70. That is 3 20s and 10, meaning 70. In other words, everybody is supposed to live at up to the age of 70, and the Bible says that anything after that is jara, is a gift, okay, and depending on the state of your health. But unfortunately, if you look at Nigeria, we're not even getting to that 70, we're not even getting to the 60. We're much less than that. And the contributing factors are very obvious. Like we said before, the poverty level is very high. The amount of money that we give or that we budget for health, for example, is very low, 3.7 around that for the country, which is extremely low. But coming back to the question that you asked about Somalia specifically.
South Sudan.
And Sudan. If you look at these countries and you say, because there is war there, the life expectancy should be lower, you are right. you will see in the next few years, probably the next 5 to 10 years, life expectancy in Sudan, in Somalia, in some of these extremely war-ravaged countries, now including Central African Republic, will be lower. You are not seeing it now because the problems were recent. But as time goes on, they will show. Let me give you an example about Nigeria. Up to about in 1980s, the Nigerian life expectancy, like Dr. Nasidi said, was higher than now. What happened? HIV/AIDS came, and the population began to suffer. Death rates increased. Since 86, when we discovered HIV/AIDS in Nigeria, the life expectancy for us, until recently, has been going down. If you look at South Africa, for example, let me give another example. If you look at South Africa, up to the time of their independence, their life expectancy was rising. After independence, it plunged. And right now, it is just barely, very barely, struggling to go up. What's the problem? HIV/AIDS, for example. It ravaged the country. Death rates are very high. And when you compare that to the fertility rate, you discover that the fertility rate has not decreased. It is, in fact, increasing.
Are you adducing HIV/AIDS as a potent factor in determining the life expectancy? I mean, is that?
Yeah, I'm just giving one example. War that you talked about.
Yes.
Certainly, the reason why I mentioned HIV/AIDS is because when you mention Somalia, where people are dying in large number, Sudan, where people are dying in large number, and you ask the question, why is it that their life expectancy is still high? And my response was, and it is still, that in the next few years, you will see that their life expectancy will go down. What we are seeing now is a figure that was computed from many years back, and of people that lived from many years back. As you look at the trend with time, you are going to observe that all these countries that have a lot of sudden deaths, like war, would be declining. They will not be increasing. And let me flip the coin and see the other part. Look at the United Arab Emirates, for example. Their life expectancy is increasing rapidly. Rapidly. What's the issue? Just like Dr. Nasidi mentioned, the conditions in which people live in United Arab Emirates are very good. They eat well. They have good health facilities. The budget for health is very high. They have good sanitation facilities. They have good rate of education. And one of the key reasons also in United Arab Emirates is the fact that most of the people that are there now are immigrants who are well educated, well skilled, that have migrated there. So they have come with improved status of health. Unlike in some countries where people are struggling as to how they will live. Nutrition rates are low. I mean, malnutrition is very high. And people are not feeding well. People are not living well. People don't have good access to water. Like in Nigeria, for example, if you look at the rate or the ratio of people who have access to good drinking water, potable water, compared to those who don't have, it is very, very, very pathetic. Even in urban areas, places like Ibadan, Lagos, Kano, Abuja inclusive, only about 80% of people in Nigeria have access to good drinking water. I'm talking of cities, so. Then when you go to rural areas, only about 50%. In some places up to 57%. So what do you expect? If you are not drinking good water, what are you importing? You are importing disease to yourself. You are importing malnutrition to yourself. And then people are also overworked. In some of these countries that have problems like Nigeria, for example, if you look at our child labor rate, is very high. About 29% of children here are used as source of labor. When you as a child are struggling to live, you are not feeding well, you don't have any education, you don't have any hope, what happens? Everything about you is reduced.
Yeah, well, Prof, sorry, Dr. Abuja, thank you very much. Again, I'm sure there are some viewers who will be listening to what we are saying, and probably will ask questions. In the past, before we had this level of economic activity in the country, there were young persons who were children, who could be also described as child laborers, who helped out their parents on the farms and still went to school, trekked several kilometers to go to school, and some of them are still alive today. Some of them well into their 60s. I see Professor Nasidi nodded, well into their 60s. How do you reconcile that, with the proposition you're making now that because of child labor, we have another causative factor for low life expectancy?
Yes. You might think that because those people are alive now, nothing has happened, but it is not true. One of the things we are saying is that we have more access now to data compared to what we had in the past. People used to say, the good old days. Are you sure it was really good? Are you sure it was that good? If there was data, are you sure it wasn't worse than now? Remember, in those days, they were killing each other because of war, tribal wars, communal clashes, diseases, and all kinds of calamities that were happening. But nobody kept record. And the few that survived come to tell us today that, in their days, things were better. In their days, people were living longer. You might think that it is true, but I don't believe that it is absolutely true. In some countries, yes, it is true. In Nigeria, for example, you cannot say so. Because if you look back, our literacy rate is just gradually increasing. If you recall, from the 60s up to the 80s, our literacy rate just skyrocketed. But from the 90s till now, it's been going down. What I mean, in comparison with the population.
Okay, let's I'm sure that if we just say, okay, the type of labor you're talking about would have to do what kind of labor, what are the challenges that such labor, come with. But Professor Nasidi, I'd like you to speak to the issue of income inequalities and how it affects, life expectancy. Because, well, I haven't conducted any poll, but from random, experiences, you discover that even the poor in the rural areas are living, longer than 80, 70, and you find a lot of really, really very old, people in the rural areas.
Yeah, again, I keep reminding you that, yes, you will find many old in both urban and rural areas, but when you take the statistics from this life expectancy, it's at birth. It's at birth. If you are born today, what are the chances that you survive up to 50 years, up to 70 years? When you do the statistics, you now realize that averagely for your nation, you are nowhere. And the issue today is, why is Nigeria having such a low life expectancy? And then these issues we are raising are the causes. Nigeria is, say, Congo, Sudan, all this are at war. But we have been at war with ourselves all the years, throughout since independence. We are just fighting each other. In fact, it was better we fought the Biafran War. After it, we had peace go on, brought peace and all this, and then everything went. But now it's like, for the past 20, 30 years, we're at war with ourselves. We leave the issues, as Dr. Abuja is saying, no power. Nigeria is generating 2-point-something. These are big issues that affects life expectancy. You are living, it's hot, mosquitoes are biting you, all this. You think you live long, you can't live long. We have to invest in power. We have to discuss power, not religion, not Christianity, Islam. We are joking. A lot of jokes. So many jokers in government, so many jokers everywhere where we are supposed to be serious, we're not serious.
But Prof, even those who have high income.
Yeah, so I'm coming to that.
Yes, even those who have high income and have access to some of these, better services, still, end up, do not even attain the age that Prof talked about earlier on.
Yeah, but generally they are predisposed to the conditions that will make them live longer than those who don't have access. So I'll give you an example. If today somebody in your village is sick and, is actually sick, they call you, you are distressed, you want to help, but within that your vicinity there's no good health center. We now talk about, allocation. Nigeria is not as poor as we are saying. We have a lot of resources. In fact, Nigeria is among the few countries in Africa that is paying for its own immunization cost. For instance, all the money for routine immunization is paid by the Nigerian government, but other immunizations, we are dependent on the distance. So if that happens in your village, and you now want to get that your relation to be treated, there's no good primary health care center functional around there. There's no good private, you understand what I'm saying? So access to good quality health is very important. Now, for instance, the current Minister of Health just came. You can't increase, average life expectancy in a place where the health system is virtually collapsed. He realized that you have so many of these primary health care centers in the country, 30,000. Out of them, less than 5,000 are functional. A lot of them came from this constituency project. You go there, they're ghosts of what a primary health care, so nothing is working. The majority, 70% of Nigerians do not have access to good quality health. So it starts from there. Secondly, the children, if you go countries that have very good, like Japan, Singapore, they invest a lot in their children. Okay? In Nigerian case, there are two sides to it. One, Nigerian government could be investing. Like, for instance, during Ransom Kuti, there was fantastic investment in child health. And he brought Nigeria to stardom by increasing our child immunization coverage above 80%. That's what we call universal childhood immunization. If you check around that time, that decade, our life expectancy increased because, if you do the average, you see that children are surviving more, the mothers are happier, things are happening in the society. Then, the investment, that's why I brought that graph, the graph with yellow and green, if they can show it. In the health, might not be as bad as we're thinking. At that time, after attaining 80% coverage, it started going down. And we started asking why. It's not because there was no investment in immunization. If they show that graph, you see the green, you see around the 90s, our immunization coverage was very good. So Nigerian government became very happy and started investing. You see the yellow? Yeah, it's okay like that. The yellow, this is the investment, the money pumped into immunization. So at that period, we got a shocker that, it's not just the money, but the more we are pumping money into immunization, the less the coverage, until a stage where Nigeria reached only 12.7% of Nigerian children were immunized. How can we expect our life expectancy to be high? Because, let me just say something, majority, 80% of the causes of lower life expectancy is caused by diseases. Then the remaining is by factors that affect disease like water, environment, and so on and so forth. And
would you say it's increasing? Because like Kingsley and I earlier pointed out, in the past, they used to be quite lower than what we have today.
Yes.
So are we making
in the
progress?
last 10 years, in the survey conducted by WHO, just released this May, 2016, it showed that even though we are still lower than all these countries at war, we have increased a little bit, at least from 47% to now 54, 55 on the average. It's a good progress, but we could do more. We could do more. We are not expected to be within the lowest.
So what are those things that are responsible for, the significant improvement?
That's what I'm saying, that, first and foremost, invest wise and prevent corruption. That graph I showed, if they show it again, you see the yellow ones, Nigerian government during that period, immediately after Ransom Kuti, pumped in a lot of money into immunization. Okay. And the children were supposed to have higher coverage, but corruption came in. The more money we pumped into immunization, the less coverage we had. And that was a disaster. It didn't happen in any country except Nigeria. That is big shame. Then secondly, the number of children to be immunized is also increasing. No doubt about that. Okay, so now is the second this is, what do you do, to make sure that, to come back to what you are saying, in terms of, to sustain, these gains. In the last 20 years, it's improving.
I wanted to know what we did, to up from 47 to 55 now.
Yeah, first and foremost.
You talked about vaccination.
Yeah, we in the last 10 years at least, we struggled to bring back the immunization coverage to above 60%. That is very, very good indeed. Whether we like it or not, we gained a little bit in mass education, health promotion. That also helped. And, 2, 3, whether we like it or not, these other factors that are affecting, health, like water, environment, all this, even though our environment is very poor, very, very poor indeed, we at least did something a little bit. We provided more water, more facilities to this. But unfortunately, areas of power, areas of nutrition are still not as good as what we think we should do. Then I would like to say,
you have other graphs. Yes, I'd like you to.
Yeah, I'll go to those graphs. The other thing is that whether we like it or not, we have also increased our allocation to health sector from around that time 3%. Now we are getting to about maybe about 6 to 7%, and that also is a good example that shows that something is happening. Then the last 3 or 4 regimes, even though there are elements of corruption also, but they still address the issue of poverty, poverty elevation, poverty orishirishi, whatever. That also, yes, helped, even though it's not very effective, but it helped. Then,
well, Professor Nasidi, all well and good. How do we contextualize what has been also described as the phenomenal rise in the number of persons who belong to the middle class in this country?
Yeah.
And, that still looks as a factor in our life expectancy.
You are absolutely right. In fact, this is praise the Lord, praise the youth. The youth of Nigeria are a great asset. Look at, the success we're making in music, in science, in, so the youth are like, say, listen, let's pull it ourselves. So this is rising, their wealth is rising, their contribution to the society is rising. People are depending less on government. And so, the middle class, this one will keep growing. If now this government can provide conducive atmosphere, it will really help. Then, secondly, also we are aware of what we eat. This contributes a lot to our survival. For instance, we eat healthier, we eat better food. Before, you were talking about cultural. I'm from Kano. The type of food I eat are mostly grain and all this. And so if you saw northerners from far before, this is a northerner, he's tall, he's slim and all this. Then the southerners is a little bit stouty. But now, if you observe in Nigeria, what is bringing us together is that it's like our diet is coming together. We look alike now. People sometimes they think I'm from Edo or from Rivers or Igbo, whatever. So, things everywhere that will increase our life expectancy, all the areas are improving. But they're improving slowly.
Yeah, Professor, sorry, Dr. Abuja, you have a point to make on this. I'll come back to cuisine so that we speak to that, and then I'm sure, Claire, that should be an area of interest, how your diet affects your life expectancy. Dr. Abuja, I see you've been itching to add to what Professor Nasir is saying.
Yes. In addition to what he said, what you are seeing now is a product of people who were educated in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. Those are the people that are now considered the middle class. You will soon find, if nothing is done, that in the next few years, it will decline. Because the level of education, the quality of our education has been declining over the years, from the 90s up to now. And the point I'm trying...
Sorry, Dr. Abuja, but straight away, how do you justify that? Public schooling may have declined, but we have seen also tremendous supplementation by private schools.
Yes.
It's costly, but private schools are there.
Yes, but how many people can afford it? When you look at Abuja, for example, where we live, there are lots of private schools, but extremely expensive. And it is only the middle class and the rich that are sending their children to those to those private schools, not the average Nigerian. And let me go back to the point I was trying to make and finish that point. In the 60s, 70s, and 80s, when there was good public education and good scholarships and so on, Dr. Nasidi and I and you probably are beneficiaries of that period.
I was.
Okay? Now, today, if you go to a public school, what you used to have, free food, if you're in the university, you get a meal ticket, you get your food free. And on Sunday...
It was 50 kobo.
Yes. On Sundays, you might even be given a full leg of chicken or sometimes half a chicken. Today, you don't even see the feather of a chicken in the university for free. You would buy it if you see it. So the middle class you are looking at now is a product of many years past. If I pray that it doesn't happen, if nothing happens, in the next 10, 20 years, the middle class that you will see will be less than what we are seeing now because people are not well prepared for adult life. And let me also add, there was a point that Dr. Nasidi was making that I need to add too, which is education. If you look at in the past, we had very few women going to school. Now it is improving. Not as good as it should be, but it is improving. Our literacy rate for men, for example, is much higher than the one for women. Let me explain this point. For any society to have good life expectancy or good life generally, your women must be educated. There's no argument about it. There's no magic about it. When you have an educated woman, she brings up an educated family, educated children, improved health, improved education for the children. When a child comes back from school, the father is at work or somewhere chasing naira or money. The mother comes and says, where is your homework? She looks at it. If the child is not doing it well, she helps the child do the homework. Even if she doesn't know how to do it, at least she reminds the child to do the homework. Okay. During your time and my time, our parents were, on the average, illiterates. They didn't know whether you had homework or not. And even if you did, there was nothing they could do about it. Hardly did you see any parent at that time asking you, where is your homework? Have you done it? Have you submitted your assignment like we do now? So that's one of the major key points. If you put a lot of effort and your resources in the social sector, meaning education, health, agriculture, which includes household food security, then you are investing in such a way that the life, not only life expectancy, but the quality of life of the population will improve.
That's right.
All right, I know we all want to live, very, very long, but we also know that nutritionists and dietitians prescribe an apple a day to keep the doctors away. But right now, let's be realistic. How many people can even afford, an apple?
Take 2 oranges instead.
Another, but I didn't want to ask, beyond hoping for what government can do in terms of provision of access to quality socio-economic infrastructures, what choice is available to the individual, to aid, higher life expectancy?
Okay, the options, let me take from where you just talked about an apple a day. You don't have to have the refined food, the large quality food to have good health. You could have very little food, but eat the right way, eat the right quantity, eat the right food, and live better. Let me give you an example. In the village, they have access to fresh food, fresh vegetables, probably not much to meat. They don't have much access to meat. But they eat things like beans and other things, soya beans and so on, that supplement protein needs. So in Nigeria, for example, we think that the person who is living well is the person who is consuming all this imported food that make them look fat, that make a man looks pregnant, rather than a woman being pregnant is men now that are getting pregnant. But the quality of the food that they eat and the quality of their health is not commensurate with what they eat. As a matter of fact, they are doing more harm to themselves than good. So in summary, even if you don't have too much, a large quantity of food, eat the right type of food in the right proportion, and your life will improve. They say that if you eat well and make food your medicine, then you don't have to take medicine. But if you don't eat well, you will take medicine as food.
All right, that's great. Yeah, Professor Nasidi, earlier we were talking about the Nigerian cuisine. Some persons believe that there's nowhere on the African continent where you have the rich variety of cuisine that Nigeria presents, in fact, anywhere else in the world. And then earlier you were giving the example of what appears now to be a confluence of various dishes and diets from different parts of the country. You're beginning to see how people from different parts of the country probably also look alike. So how is all of this playing out in terms of our life expectancy or quality of life in general, particularly also with regard to persons being picky and choosy as to what they eat and when they eat?
Well, just to listen before I emphasize on that is to say that, or to draw attention to the fact that one of the greatest major determinants of life expectancy, in a country is the frequency of particular diseases. For instance, in Nigeria, number one now, it's not malaria that determines this, but lung disease, acute respiratory infection, and so on and so forth. So for this, you have a vaccine, that if you use at childhood, you eliminate it. So all this, let me come to say, I'll come to the cuisine. Yes, countries like Japan, Singapore, Hong Kong, China, all these countries that, US that are now having the highest life expectancy, they invest a lot, into this childhood something. Then you have HIV/AIDS you mentioned, you have diarrhea. Malaria, in fact, now stands as number 6 in determining our life expectancy. But most of these, 80%, as I said, of the determinants of this life expectancy is how exposed your organism or your body is to these infections at early stage and even during your lifetime. Our body is at war with these diseases. We live in an environment that is dirty, polluted, and full of all these vectors of these diseases. Now, so the issue of diet, is now determinant of, causing the other determinants, the non-communicable diseases, diabetes, hypertension, and so on and so forth. So these ones are about, contributing 15% to life expectancy. But nevertheless, they are so important, because even if you take good drugs and you don't take good food, you don't eat healthy, the drugs might not work. If you remember at the stage where we are emphasizing that people should take antiretroviral therapy against HIV/AIDS, within a short period we realize that if somebody is having HIV/AIDS, you are giving him antiretroviral drug, and he doesn't eat well, he doesn't even heal. The drug is even a problem for him. So the World Health Organization, Global Fund, say, oh no, we have to combine it with better nutrition. Now coming to the cuisine, before we eat pounded yam, we eat less processed food and so on. Late at night. But we wake up in the morning, we go to the farm, we work hard, or we trek, as you said, from far, we burn them. But now you want to eat pounded yam. Early in the morning, you come out, you enter your car, you are going to NTA, you stretch your leg in air-conditioned room, then you go back again, you say, Madam, I want pounded yam again, you end up with diabetes. If you eat too much palm oil, you end up with high blood pressure, chronic...
coronary disease.
Coronary disease, you are an expert, and all sorts of this. All this will also contribute to your not being able to reach that average of 60, 70, 80. So that now to come to the way you take and what Dr. Abuja is saying, at times too, for instance, we have a professor, I think Professor Ajayi from University of Ibadan, Professor Wilson from Oxford, who said, look, even if you are diabetic, I'm giving you an example. Before, if you are diabetic, you can't eat this, you can't eat that. But they now realize that, no, you can eat everything, only if you eat it small. But if you sit down to go and you eat 3 loaves of pounded yam and gushi and palm oil and all this, then you get up, you think you are going to be healthy, it won't work. So it's good to eat the right food, eat bit by bit, don't over task your system, and at the same time, as again Dr. Abuja has mentioned, people think that you have to eat the onyibo or processed food. It's because now we are changing our diet, especially the urban areas, to eating more of this onyibo, junk food, and so on, so that we're ending up with so many. It's like we're having the communicable diseases were the #1 killers of our people before. The non-communicable diseases were low. Now, with all this urbanization, all this onibonization, as I call it, going for more processed food, communicable disease is now becoming a big determinant in our health. And
non-communicable diseases.
Non-communicable diseases. So, what do we do to get this through?
Just before you come to that, I think we have a vox pop. Please, right.
That's right. Yes. We have a vox pop. We would like you to also speak to this, and it has to do. We'll be talking about disease burden, communicable, not communicable. Of course, for you to know that you have a disease, obviously you need to be checked. So we try to get from our respondents, how regularly they present themselves for medical examination.
I'm not the type that does this periodic checkup, but something happened of late that I had to do general checkup. You understand? But it made me understand that, man, this checkup thing is very, very vital and is an essential.
For some time now, I think if I should remember, for almost 5 years or plus, I'm not.
Why?
Because I'm healthily fit. I'm just physically fit.
Well, medically, I think I don't have any issue concerning my medical health, and I don't know whether medical is existing or not. I've been healthy like this right from time my mother gave birth to me. I think when I was a kid.
The company that I'm working, we have a hospital that, like when I have any headache, anything, I quickly log to the hospital and check myself.
No, I used to check myself maybe three months.
I did that early December.
I seldom go for a checkup anyway, until sometimes when I'm sick, I go to the hospital for a test or something, but I will just wake up and go for tests. It's not common.
But all right, let's round up something very clear, of...
well, I'm guilty. I seldom do.
All right, so let's get the views of our guest, Dr. Abuja. I mean, you listen to them in terms of, it's not just when a person takes ill that you say, look, present yourself for medical examination or, advice against self-medication. How do all of this ultimately impact on the quality of life of the individual? Because the average, which is life expectancy nationwide, would come from the quality of life that each of us lives.
Yes, nature has made life in such a way that it needs to be nurtured. Your life needs to be nurtured right from when you are born. This is the reason why we age. And it's not only aging, this is the reason why we also need to maintain our health. When you reach a certain age, like when you are up to the age of 40, you are supposed to be regularly checking your health with the medical expert, with doctors. But even before that, even at home, even for a little child, it is very important, for example, the mother, to be checking the child from time to time, almost on a daily basis. If you recall, during the time we were growing, it was our mother that used to beat us. And when your mother is beating you, and she touches your knee, and you say, and then she asks, what happened to your knee? Sometimes you were injured during the day. You didn't want to tell your parents, maybe because you were playing when you were not supposed to play or something.
You use sands to rub on
Yes, you rub something on it to stop the bleeding, and you expose yourself to pain. It is at the time that she's beating you that she finds that something is wrong with you. Compare that to today. We have nannies now that are beating children instead of the mothers. And many of these nannies don't even care. If a child screams, they say, shut up. And even if they don't do that, what is the probability that this nanny, this babysitter, will report what she finds in a baby to the mother? And sometimes when the mother comes back from work late, she's exhausted, she's tired, and even if the house help gives a report, that report enters this ear and comes out right from the other ear. She will not be paying attention. That is just when for a little child, but for us generally, at home, everybody is supposed to be checking himself on a daily basis. You wake up in the morning, you don't feel very good today. Maybe you didn't sleep well. You wake up with a headache. That headache may not be as a result of disease or anything. It may just be that you didn't sleep well, or that you didn't sleep enough, or that you were worried about something. If, however, as the day progresses, the headache also progresses, and you're not getting any better, and maybe you do the usual, take paracetamol, and the headache still persists, you naturally are expected to seek help, to find out why your headache is not coming down, or is not disappearing. Instead, it is continuing. And for some adults, you will find, especially for men, you will find that you might have high blood pressure, you might have malaria, you might have some infectious disease that you don't know. or that you're not paying attention to.
Now that you just mentioned malaria, now 2 of the causes listed by WHO, as a factor for low life expectancy in Nigeria, influenza and pneumonia. And I'm wondering, why those 2 factors? Why?
Okay. Yeah, it's not only pneumonia, nutrition also. When you have these combinations, when somebody has malaria and the person is prone or has respiratory infection, or the person has malnutrition, they contribute, they build each other up. A malnourished child that has malaria is more likely to get into a serious problem than a child that is not malnourished, that is well nourished, but just has malaria. A child also that has malaria but has no acute respiratory infection is more likely to get out of the malaria problem faster than the one that has a respiratory problem, because each factor contributes to the problem.
Okay, yes.
Yeah, may I add? Actually, we are aware of the climate change globally. And if you observe this climate change bringing new pathogens, you have a lot of flu, bird flu, all these viruses circulating. So the number of viruses, and the other creating this influenza, pneumonia, all this is increasing. So they are now playing a higher role, than malaria and killing more people, and so on and so forth. Then also the global warming, these weather changes are affecting the vectors, that are transmitting these diseases. Take, for instance, behavior of the mosquitoes, behavior of the rats transmitting Lassa. They are moving wider. So one of the major issues also is the global warming, changing in this. But that doesn't actually affect nation improving their life expectancy. If you can, for instance, the pneumonia and all this, you can reduce it by more than 90% if you immunize the child against this pneumonia, viruses, and so on and so forth. So it's done. If you also, address the issue of malaria, vector control, not just giving the drugs, also, these are things that I think we should, take into consideration.
All right, gentlemen, what is the role or place of recreation in quality of life, and therefore life expectancy of a country?
Yeah, for instance, thank you very much. I would say, if you take countries, all these countries, Japan that I've mentioned, the big countries, America, whatever, one, investment in health, okay? If you observe, one of the major differences between us and them is that, an average family in these countries, if you take their family budget, they will devote almost 40% of their listening to their health. And unfortunately, we devote 40% or even 50% of our budget to our cars, our houses and so on. But they invest in their health, they check themselves regularly, they spend a lot on themselves. That's number one. Number two, you talk about, recreation, exercises. Take, for instance, Abuja. This is a modern city. Yesterday I went to Gwarimpa. Everywhere is built up. No recreation space, no children playground, nothing.
The plots of land have
been allocated. So many. So it's a jungle of blocks and cement and all this. The whole place is a mess. So you are laughing, but this is a reality. No. In the morning, for instance, if not because you call me here now, I would have been at the golf course. Every day I leave my house 6:15. I go to the golf course. I see so many people. We play at the open air. We enjoy. Or I used to play tennis before. Recreation is very. Listen, these people walk out. You go to the U.S. In fact, let me tell you. After Algeria, Senegal has improved their average lifespan, where somebody mobilized the entire country. If you go to Dakar, all their villages, you will be shocked at the rate at which they walk out. You see,
Prof, we must wind up. Yes, because we have a second topic that we must look at. For Bakisli, we've got very few tweets coming.
Well, yes, the tweets, Franklin of Former says, why do we expect life expectancy in Nigeria to be like that of other nations when our governments are breeding poverty and underdevelopment?
He has the second one.
Well, that's right. It says that for Nigeria to attain a higher life expectancy, we must change from this unhealthy, borrowed Western lifestyles.
Okay, and Innocent Yawal James also tweets, life expectancy is measured by certain parameters like viable economy, security, good health system, and so on. There are all challenges. These are all challenges in Nigeria. Now, these are some of the tweets we have received. But just before we, of course, end our conversation, gentlemen, we did sample opinion poll out there to see how many, of course, how long Nigerians would want to live. I would want to live as long as possible. I'm sure everyone here also wish the same. But let's take that box right now.
40 to 50 years, it's okay for me.
100.
Wow. 80 years and above.
100.
As God's permits.
Definitely, I need, by the grace of God, in fact, I wish if God can keep me 98 years.
Any age God permits.
Only God has said. I'm not the owner of the life that I'm living. But any day where God says my time, there's nothing I can do about it.
To live like my old fathers.
It's God who knows. It's not my intention. But I don't want to stay longer than this my age. I'm thankful that I'm alive these days.
Live 200 years.
All right, let's start with Dr. Abuja. How long would you wish to live?
Well, as long as possible. In my family, there's a trend back to about 8 generations. All my father died at 94. His father died at 90-something. My great-grandfather died at 90-something.
So you are also hoping?
I'm hoping that I'll at least get to 90.
Prof?
Yes, I belong to a group called Global Virus Group. You know, their theory is that they want to push the possibility that average human can live at least on the average of 150 years. So they believe that if they improve health facilities and your quality of life, you know, they believe they can make humans to live up to 150 years. So my wish, if I can live healthy and remain strong up to 150, may the Almighty God help me to get that to happen. So
Kingsley, you must say something.
All right, Claire, no. We have our guests, who are responding to questions. We pray to God to give us long life and good health, and some of the issues that they've talked about regard to personal lifestyle. This is also very important. Good diet, good education, exercise, regular exercise, and then getting out of harm's way.
And of course, going from regular checks.
Yes, of course. That's part of it.
Just to say some few things is that Nigeria can actually improve this life expectancy in the next 5-10 years even faster if we are going to do these things we set to do now. One, increase access. As the current minister wants to improve, say 10,000 primary health cares to be functional. If you can do that, that would be very, very great. I'm appealing to the National Assembly to keep increasing. It is what they call Abuja Declaration, that minimum of budget allocation should be 15%. Now we are less than even 10%. They can do a lot. In fact, I can praise them that they have helped to increase the budget allocation from 3-4% to about 7%. We are begging they should consider. They should make it up to 15%.
Professor Abdul Salami Nasidi, former CEO, Nigeria Center for Disease Control. Many thanks to you.
Thank you very much.
All right. And of course, Dr. Isaac Akuma Abuja, public health expert and former staff of World Health Organization. We'd like to thank you for coming.
Thank you very much.
You're watching Good Morning Nigeria. We'll take a break. When we come back, we'll be looking at Donald Trump's executive orders.
On a white sheet of exam paper, I am calm like a sniper, bam like a piper, glam like a rapper. I'm never a slacker.
Fail like a failure.
How was your result?
This wicked girls here was gave me.
Then give me.
They gave me 7 E's.
This week on your award-winning comedy series, Professor John Bull, starring Kanayo Okanayo, Mercy Johnson, Queen Wokoye, Yomi Fash Lanso, Stephen Odingbe.
Address me as the Ono. My title is waiting for me.
Oh no, we're waiting.
And Ono.
Mr. Owowu.
No, I can't take that. Olowu. Hey, I don't like all this. What is that name they call you all over the campus?
Flashbird with a big splash, depending on how you want to lash.
Big name that kills a small dog.
Professor John Bull, fasten your seatbelts this Tuesday and Friday, 8:30 to 9 p.m. on NTA Network, International, and Star Times. It's absolutely bombastic.
Over and out. Welcome to the new speed of life.
NTA Television College, an affiliate of Ahmadu Bello University Zaria, a specialized institution charged to provide quality professional education in television production, engineering, and journalism. The college is offering 4 weeks course on computer graphics and animations to train new entrants and retraining of existing media operatives. Date 6th February to 3rd March 2017. Registration 100,000 naira with accommodation. Also, 1 week intensive course in advanced management techniques for executive officers, CEOs, COOs, managers, and heads of admin. Date 13th of March to 17th of March 2017. Registration 20,000 naira. Another 4 weeks course on principles and practice of marketing for marketing heads in radios and television houses, public relation agencies, media heads in advertising, brand support managers, media brokers, and heads of corporate affairs. Date 20th of March to 14th April 2017. Registration 100,000 naira with accommodation. All courses will take place at NTA Television College Rayfield, Jos. For more inquiries, call 08069809807 or call 07036607155 or email us at ntacollege@gmail.com. NTA Television College, training you to be the best you want to be.
Okay, sir. You may now go in for your interview.
Thank you. Ah, my shoe. And to think I just bought this very expensive foreign shoe 2 months ago.
So sorry about your shoes. This is why I advise my friends to always patronize made in Nigeria products. See this shoe. It's made in Nigeria and I've had it for 2 years and it's still as good as the day I bought it.
Made in Nigeria products are good quality, and stringent government regulations and certification now mean the goods made in Nigeria meet international standards. Make the patriotic choice today. Buy right. Buy Made in Nigeria.
This is a public service announcement brought to you by NTA.
All right, since assumption of office last month, the President of the United States, Donald Trump, has continued to dish out executive orders, perhaps in an effort to fulfill his campaign promises to the people of the United States. So far, President Donald Trump has signed about 20 orders, memoranda, and actions. Some of them include immigration ban, Mexico City policy, and travel ban on citizens from 7 countries perceived to be terror hotspots. And they include Iraq, Iran, Syria, Libya, Yemen, Somalia, and Sudan.
All right, that's Mr. Donald Trump, for the 5th President of the United States. My colleague Claire just talked about what he's been doing since he was sworn in. That's about 2 weeks ago that he assumed office. Now, we have with us in the studios another familiar face, Mr. Jide Ojo, Public Affairs Analyst. Jide Ojo, a pleasure to have you join us.
Thanks for having me. Good morning, Nigeria.
All right, let's put this in context. It's the President of the United States has signed a number of executive orders, and it's also giving indication as to what he would like to do. But of particular concern to us and then to the rest of the world, from which we have seen a number of reactions, include the one on immigration, and in particular also the directive with regard to the border with Mexico. Sticking with the issue of the immigration ban, visa ban, restrictions for X number of days, what's your take on this, and how does that play out, in terms of U.S. relations with important blocs, allies, and antagonists?
Thank you for that question. The thing we need to understand is, I think the furor across the world about all these executive orders are quite needless. The man, to be forewarned is to be forehand. The man told us during his campaign he was going to do this. A lot of people said, no, he can't do that. Maybe it's because he's campaigning, politicians campaigning poetry, they deliver on prose and all of that. But the man actually gave us more than a year warning that he was going to do all of this: immigration ban, deportation of undocumented Americans, undocumented immigrants, the building of Mexico wall. He's been saying this since 2015. So nobody should be caught unaware that he's trying to fulfill his promise, because that's the whole essence of why Americans voted for him. And we know that this man is not an establishment person, quote and unquote, because it's not your regular politicians. He's a maverick, quote and unquote. You know, if he didn't do anything different, he wouldn't have been there in the first place. You know, that's why Americans preferred him over and above his co-contender Hillary Clinton. So I think we should draw the necessary lesson. For me, Donald Trump is saying what other countries are saying, more in a brash manner, while others are doing in a very diplomatic manner. What do I mean? If you look at the controversy surrounding Brexit earlier in 2016, what was the whole philosophy behind Brexit? Why did Britain, for instance, said, we don't want to be part of the European Union anymore. We want to be alone. It was part of issue of immigration, issue of criminalities from some countries and all of that, you know, making Britain to be safer for the citizens and all of that. So you have a number of other European countries following suit, you know, arising from all these illegal migrants into Germany and to Greece and to... So it is just more point blank, less diplomatic about it. It tells it, it says it as it is. It's not your regular politicians that kind of window dress, his speech.
Okay, fine. Mr. Ojo, he's saying it point blank, he's being brash about it, but let us look at implications on the world order. Now, his executive orders on immigration, one, blocks immigrants from some countries, stops refugees for 90 days, stops refugees from, yes, for 120 days. Now, there is an international instrument that provides certain rights for refugees who are settling in other countries, which, it's binding on member countries. So what is the implication of that on the UN instrument?
That's very one thing that's very instructive about all of this is, like I said, you need to understand the mindset of the man Donald Trump. And also the party on which he ran. The Republicans are known to be diametrically opposed to the way Democrats run their own government. Yeah, there are international instruments, but the United Nations, who is the most influential member of the United Nations, is still the United States. And what other countries will not get away with, the US will get away with, because again, it's about who has the chunk of the funding for the UN, and also hosting the country, the UN, United States headquarters and all of that. But I think you will find out that even within the US, there's a lot of cacophony of voices that are against what Donald Trump is doing. Recall the sack of the acting Attorney General that took place earlier in the week. Why was she sacked? She said, I can't carry this out. This is against possibly citing these international instruments and all of that, that she cannot endorse the enforcement of this ban. And for that reason, she lost her job. Of course, she was going to lose it anyway until the secretary is confirmed. So he wants to do things his own way, not minding whether he ruffled any feathers, not minding whether they are... Of course, there are already litigations, even within the U.S. A lot of judges have been making pronouncements on different aspects of the executive order.
How is the UN expected to react to, the executive orders, especially on immigration and refugees?
Again, one would have hoped that the United Nations will call him to order and show him the signed pact where, United States is a signatory to some of these human rights and the refugee protections and all of that. But the man is being very smart. He didn't, with the exception of Syrian refugee that he said the ban is indefinite. He's been saying that, look, one is 120 days, another is 90 days. So it's just for us to sort out few things. And I think the implementation itself has been very controversial. Why will you, somebody who is on board already, has been processed through the immigration, has landed in the U.S., and now you are detaining them? If you start the following day, or maybe those who are yet to board, you can tell them, sorry, you cannot board these flights because there is a new executive for that. But situations where somebody had already boarded, the flight has taken place, they are already on arrival, only for you to detain them and say they cannot come into the U.S. That's very uncanny. That's very, very inhuman. In my own opinion.
I was just going to say, Mr. Joe, as we said, I mean, Donald Trump was sworn in on the 20th of January, and some of the executive orders, particularly with regard to immigration, 90 days, the other 120 days, which means that these ones will fall within the first 100 days of his being the 45th president of the United States. Now, is there a sense in which you find that perhaps history might record that Donald Trump's first 100 days were really turbulent? I'm asking this question against the background of reports that he had some very unfriendly telephone conversation with the Australian Prime Minister. The British Prime Minister has visited, but when she returned back, she said, look, the immigration ban it's uncomplimentary. It's uncomplimentary. The Mexican president was supposed to visit, but it's called it off. And here is Donald Trump, running, as it were. You said he gave some forewarning. For how long can he sustain this tempo of antagonism against Americans who have been demonstrating and against the rest of the world?
I'm not sure he could sustain that for long, but I think he just wanted Americans to trust him, that I have promised and I've delivered. And he's looking at that 100 days, which is why he's rushing all of these executive orders. Of course, we can't say, if we take a look at his inaugural speech, he said this: American first, American, first, is there to protect the interest of America. It doesn't care what the rest of the world says or does or whatever. Again, I think at some point, when the reality of what he's trying to do hits him in the face, because there is what is called in international diplomacy and international relations, reciprocity. If Americans are all over the world, it's not only in the United States that we have them. Quite a significant number of Americans are in Europe and in Africa. And if there is a kind of reciprocity, he may find that American interest will be more disadvantaged than what he thought is. Because you can't enforce protectionism in a global economy like we currently have it.
Exactly, Jude, because I was wondering if you can respond to this within the very less than 2 minutes we have to round up. Donald Trump, is campaigning on making America great again. Yeah. And again is, of course, the addition. What are those variables that made America great in the first place? Certainly, it's not isolationist policy. No. These were policies that launched America, in fact, isolated America even before the Second World War.
That's true.
So, are we seeing a return back to those days, those years when, America has been a member of international organizations, NATO, but these are organizations that Trump is opting out. So, how great is America likely to be with all these foreign policies?
I think the man is delusional. I mean, there's no two-way about it. Somebody has even called him a grandson of Adolf Hitler, and I think that label fits. But the point is this: I think he's just listening to himself and to his white supremacists in America. Because the great America we know is a country of inclusivity. It's a country that is liberal, that has human rights values, and that has promoted globally through United States Agency for International Development. All of this. I've had the privilege of working for USAID-funded programs and projects in the past, and I know how we go about advocacy and about gender, about human rights, about all of this. So these are things these are values that Trump executive orders and new policies are trying to destroy. And a lot of people have said, look, you can't get far with this. In the interim, you may get applause from those who have the same mindset as you do. It's just so unfortunate the way the outcome of the election came to be. Because if the 3 million votes that Hillary Clinton had mattered than the 100,000 votes with which he made the 45th president of the United Nations, the story, the narrative will have been different. But I think the global world order is going to be affected, and I think the earlier the United Nations steps in to call him to order through resolutions and through some diplomatic shuttles to let him realize that, look, you don't have the monopoly of what you are trying to do. We can also do same, and it will hurt American interests. America's global interest is all over the world. We have a number of their companies in Nigeria and all of that.
You know, Kingsley, just before you sign him up, some people will say, look, the man is saying, don't come to my country, and you stay in your country now.
That's the lesson. That's actually the lesson we should draw, that every country should think of its own national interest first before the foreign interest. And I think our leaders should draw the right lessons on that. That, you know, the other day, UK just deported 84 or thereabout Nigerians.
And Ghanaians.
So why shouldn't we also make life better through good governance to make sure that we don't migrate to all of this country where we are threatened day and night, and we are looking over our shadows when we walk the streets, because you don't know who may fall victim of some of these crimes.
Jide Ojo, public affairs analyst, we would like to thank you for being with us. It was a very short conversation. We've not had time to examine, for instance, you know, the role Congress might play in seeking to restrain Donald Trump. Already we have some voices, particularly from the Democratic Party, indicated that they are not in support of what Donald Trump is doing. But of course, those contestations will come when Donald Trump begins to lay out some of his plans and bills before the U.S. Congress. Jide Ojo, thank you for being with us today.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
All right, Claire?
Yeah, time for sports now. And Cameroon beat Ghana to reach 2017 Africa Cup of Nations final. And of course, at the end of the match, it was 2-0. And the Nigeria Football Federation finds Nigerian champions Enugu Rangers over crowd disturbance and misconduct. Time to join our sports desk.